I just want to welcome you all to the webinar for the Masters in Psychology program. Really, the main purpose, excuse me, why we exist is our mission as a school is to integrate psychology with the Catholic Christian teaching on of human dignity. So, Dr. Ewing, if you could share a little bit about the online formatting and our mission, our integrative component, that would be great.
So I'd be happy to. So one of the great things about teaching at DMU is the integration piece. For those of you who are involved already are aware of the text that we use to guide that, which is the Catholic Christian model for the person, the meta model. We have actual theologians that work with us for designing the courses, and we get a lot of great feedback from our priests and the laity. And it's really a valuable source of wisdom that, especially when designing the leadership part of the course, we take into account. So something you might expect to see, for example, in the 615 course, which is personal leadership or practical leadership, is examples from the saints and martyrs about certain cardinal virtues that we may or may not take for granted in our everyday leadership opportunities. But the understanding of psychology as it's married to the thriving of the human person through our Catholic Christian model is central to everything that we do.
Great, thank you. I'm going to continue on. And by the way, for those that have joined a little bit later, if any questions come up, by the way, feel free to drop them in the chat section and the Q&A section, and we'll be sure to address those at the end when we open up the floor. So the next thing I'd like to share with you is our accreditation, and we are institutionally accredited through the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. This is one of the 7 major accrediting bodies. And in the bottom left section, you'll see the APA, the American Psychological Association. And while this degree is not accredited through the APA, because you would not find that at a graduate level, you'd see that at the doctoral level, and our PsyD program is APA accredited. We do use the APA writing style in this program so that we can better prepare you for your just your understanding of psychology, and when you enter into the workforce, or if you're trying to advance in that field, or adding to your vocation. And then we also have in the bottom right side the NC-SARA, and that's the National Council for State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. And what this means is that regardless of where you're located, this degree will be recognized as coming from a regionally accredited institution. So we make sure that we are really preparing you for a quality education. So as I mentioned before, this program is 100% online. We're institutionally or regionally accredited. And by the way, the GRE is not required. I know that's a big question for many people. This is a step that you wouldn't have to worry about in going through the enrollment process. So now we're going to dive into the different concentrations that we offer. So one that we offer is marriage and family studies, and this is a great option for students that want to have more of a background with the marriage and family population, whether you're working in human services or in ministry or whatever it may be. And then we also have a pre-PhD concentration. This is a great option for those of you that are looking to eventually further your education with a doctorate. It's primarily for those that are going into academia and into research. It's not a requirement that you take this one if you're planning to go into your doctorate, but it is a good source of preparing yourself for that. And then, of course, we have leadership psychology, which we're going to be talking about today, and we'll be covering how it works very well for those of you that are looking at more industrial and organizational positions and different types of leadership skills. Then we also offer a, let me start with this one, human services counseling concentration. In the program, you do learn some counseling techniques. Again, it's not a counseling program, but This is something that uh, you'll still learn about, and this one does hone in a little bit deeper into that. And then self-design. This is a great choice for those of you that have an interest in many of these different directions. And if you wanted to take electives from, let's say, let's use human services counseling as one example and leadership psychology is another, you could pull electives from each of these. So that way you can further customize the program. Dr. Ewing, if you could just share a little bit of an overview on the concentration for leadership psychology and how it works and how it leads very well within one's personal life and in their vocation and their profession, that would be great.
Sure. I'm not sure if you want to rewind the slide one or not, but
Sure.
I can tell you, for those of you who are here, thank you for being here, by the way. It's a fascinating program, the leadership psychology. It's something that I've seen at many universities. This one is doing it in the most thoughtful way. We have a solid course curriculum with 3 different courses for the concentration, each one focusing on different aspects of leadership. You'll learn all kinds of great tactics and techniques. More importantly, you'll learn how to lead yourself. You'll learn more about self-reflection than perhaps you already know. I've received some great feedback from some of our consecrated individuals that this follows a lot of their early instruction, at least in the introspective part. But one of the things that I think that we definitely need to emphasize is that leadership exists at every level and in every job. You can be a leader of your family, you can be a leader of your parish, you can be a leader of a program or an organization. But everyone has the opportunity to exercise those leadership skills, but we might not all have those leadership skills. But the marriage of psychology and leadership, I think, is something that is really valuable in your everyday life. I have found, at least over the last 10 or 11 years since I got my doctorate in psychology, that the understanding that it has given me allowed me to write a book, allowed me to advance in my career, and gave me the tools that I needed to better understand what was going on, why it was going on. We use the dirty word of office politics, hierarchical organizations, democratic organizations, the difference between transformational, transactional, and servant leadership styles, and the strange quirks that certain individuals seem to have picked up over time. But this program really does go into everything from building yourself in self-leadership to the stages of team formation, all the way through leading entire organizations.
Great, wonderful, thank you. So the next thing I wanted to share with all of you is the curriculum itself and what this will look like a little bit more. As students, you would all be taking in this program a total of 11 courses, and 8 of them are the core courses, and you'll see that on the left-hand side. Again, these are the courses that every student in the program will be taking. But then on the right-hand side, primarily for this program, you'll see the 3 electives that you'll be taking. So these are transformational leadership, leading people programs and organizations, and applied leadership skills. So Dr. Ewing, if you could also share a little bit about where these electives fall. I know that it could vary based on when the student enrolls, but if you could share a little bit more about that, then that would be great. And also, of course, the content of each elective.
Sure. So as you can see from the numbering scheme, these do fall toward the end of your tenure in the program. That is intentional. A lot of these leadership courses have been designed with the idea that you have a lot of the psychological principles, the developmental principles already under your belt. Some of them may apply less than others. Obviously, statistics won't be required for these courses. But I can tell you that a lot of the underlying psychological principles are addressed not from a teaching and training perspective, but from a utility perspective. So 595 in transformational leadership is a course that is in progress right now and being built. We are renovating the course so that it is more applicable to larger organizations and really moving from that internal to external focus. 590 is the program that has been in effect for several semesters now. Leading people programs and organizations. This is where we focus on teamwork, esprit de corps, the morality and ethics of organizational decision making, and those types of pieces. We do case studies like the Challenger disaster versus some of the other pieces. I can't recall which of the Branson. We talk about Richard Branson and his success, and we kind of define that. And there's some great videos that the team over at DMU has put together that relate all of those sorts of things to the thriving of the human person and the Catholic Christian perspective. Applied leadership skills is in its first teaching session right now. It has yielded some amazing fruit. I'm very proud of this particular course. It was built based off of several ideas that we've had over the course of the last few years. We took the book that I wrote, we took some additional literature, and we combined it, and it's really started to take off. So we encourage things like contemplative journaling. We use the Jesuit Examen. We focus on yourself as a person and as a leader and how those relate to each other. And then it isn't until the very end of that particular course that we start even orienting toward the other. We kind of take one of the John Maxwell maxims, if you will, that you want to become the kind of person that people want to follow if you want to be a leader.
Great. It's interesting. I've spoken with a lot of students that go into this program because they have an interest in going into consulting. They love the idea of going into life coaching. And so they have a natural interest in positive psychology. Dr. Ewing, I remember, I believe it was Dr. Clousley that shared a little bit about that when we launched this program, that's sort of a component. Can you speak on that a little bit?
So positive psychology underlies almost all of what we teach in these courses. It's one of the components I think that is crucial. Social psychology, the psychology of self. We talk about, for example, social determinism, triadic reciprocal determinism from Albert Bandura. We talk about the schemata that we create and how that relates to our persona. But all of it really does come back to a lot of that positive psychology. So Dr. Clousley is absolutely right, and she's involved, integrally involved as the leader of the department or the program, if you will, in writing and revising and approving these courses. So she does great work. I love working for her.
Great. All right, let's continue on. And for many of you, by the way, many of you are here because you're still exploring your options as to going into this degree, or maybe you're seeking other schools, and that's wonderful. But for many of you, you have different reasons of why you're exploring this as a potential degree to follow. Some of you are currently working in the field, and so having this degree will be a good way for you to advance and climb the ladder and gain some credentials. Many of you are here because you might actually be in a religious vocation, but having a background in psychology will help with faith formation and working within the seminaries and serving as a catechist. And we have a lot of people that pursue this degree for those reasons as well. And many of you may even be here fresh out of your undergrad. Maybe you're completing your undergrad and now just looking into the next step And this is also a good option for those of you that are planning to go into a brand new position, whether it's in in an organization serving as a consultant or in HR, or maybe you're looking to go into human services, which is wonderful. So I'd like to share this just to reaffirm you that there are a lot of different motivations for pursuing this degree, and it's a very versatile degree as well. One thing that it's not designed for is to go into licensure as a counselor. We do have a degree for that, but there is a difference between the counseling program that we offer and the psychology program. And for those of you that are looking for something versatile and 100% online, especially for those of you that do have that interest in positive psychology and in leadership, this would be a great option for you in those realms. Now, the next thing I'd like to share with you would be the career opportunities. Again, I'd mentioned just a second ago that it's a very versatile degree. It can lend into many different directions. And so listed here are the industrial and organizational positions that are very common. So as you're seeing, this is great for those that are going into more of an executive position, as an executive director, a consultant. Many of you might be exploring the idea of going into HR or within public relations, or serving as a policy officer, or even going into behavioral analytics. Again, this is very useful. You'll be gaining a lot of writing skills and communication skills. And again, with this concentration specifically, it is very good in training you to take on those leadership positions as well. And I like to highlight Emily Leadham. So Emily is a graduate of Divine Mercy University, and she earned her master's in psychology with us back in 2019. And she now runs they actually have a new name in the Diocese of Sioux Falls, but and I think they call themselves the Lord's Center now, but it's basically the Diocesan Office of Marriage and Families, and she serves as the executive director. So her role is to oversee the licensed professional counselors and the clinical psychologists, and she does a lot of the behind the scenes involvement and leading in that environment. So for those of you that are looking into that sort of direction, whether it's within a religious environment or secular environment, this degree, and specifically leadership psychology, is very useful for that. Next, we have social and mental health service positions. Again, many of you might be looking a little bit more into going into human services. And these are just a collection of examples of the type of positions you could go into with this degree. And again, this is a program where you will learn some counseling techniques, though it's not a counseling program, but it's great for those that want to have that background in psychology, learning how to better identify mental health difficulties that individuals are facing and how to work with them, and also properly refer them if it's necessary to go toward a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist potentially. So this is very useful in these directions. And then next we have education. Some of you might already have that involvement with education, but this is a great option for those that want to teach psychology, whether it's within a high school setting or within a community college setting, or serving in some sort of capacity in higher education. We also have examples of those that get this degree and they end up working in more of a government law enforcement environment. So it's very possible to use this degree within criminal profiling, or as a parole officer, or within drug and alcohol, being a specialist in those capacities, or within voc rehab. So again, this is just lending a little bit more to the versatility of this degree. And then lastly, ministry. Many of you might already have involvement in ministry, and you've been called to add more of a background in psychology because it works so well, whether it's within catechesis or working within the diocese. Folks have earned this degree and they've gone into working in marriage and families, or as a victim within the diocesan office of victims assistance. It works very well with faith formation as well, and it's very common for those that are in a consecrated life to use this degree within faith formation. So again, just to share the diversity of this degree. So next, I want to share with you the different options that you have. So as students, these are just a couple of examples. They're both considered full-time, but you do have the option to either complete this degree in 26 months or in 16 months. And depending on what your daily schedule would permit, for those of you, many of you might be working full-time, or maybe you have a busy home life. And so perhaps the 26-month track would be a good option. And then for those of you that maybe you have a little bit more time where you could commit toward pursuing your degree at a faster rate, the 16-month track might be a great option as well. So Dr. Ewing, if you could share a little bit more about your experience, at least with the students that you've spoken with and have worked with, as far as their time commitment and their experiences, that would be great.
Sure. Like any course, it's going to take longer for some folks per week than it does for others. We always have a decent amount of reading. Obviously, this is a master's level course. But I can assure you that at least in these three courses, in the leadership concentration, the reading will be personally applicable and definitely applicable to your style and learning about leadership, either your own competencies or the skills that you'll be learning. Most students take, if I would have to estimate, anywhere from 10 to 15 hours a week per class. That has been my experience, although I have had students in 590 say that it takes slightly less, and students in 615s say that it takes slightly more. Again, some of that might be due to the critical reflection required in 615, where people are examining themselves and having to essentially regurgitate their emotions and the way that those emotions tie into leadership characteristics or their own psychological well-being into a journal article or journal entry, I should say. But realistically, you can expect to spend a minimum of 10 hours a week, I would say.
Yeah, and I'll even just to jump into that as well. I hosted a webinar a few weeks back with Emily Leadham. She was the example of our graduate, and her experience has been that there have been some terms where she was going through the content in 6 hours a week. That was really the commitment that she needed to put in because she was very familiar with the information. Some of the information she just loved, and so it was very easy for her to breeze through it. And then there were other terms where maybe the content was a little bit more dense, like statistics. That's very common for students. So she might have to set aside a little extra time to better absorb the information. So it really can range. If you're looking at the 26-month track in brackets, you're seeing 15 to 18 hours. It's actually, from just my experience as well, speaking with students, maybe a little bit closer to 10 to 12, but I think we've actually put in 15 to 18 to be a little bit more conservative with that number. For the 16-month track, it's probably a little bit closer to 20 to 25. Again, we put in 25 to 30, again, just to be a little bit more conservative. And you're also seeing two different costs here. And I want to highlight first that there are scholarships available, which we're going to dive into, but you're seeing a difference between these two because for the 16-month track, on average, you would be taking 2 courses per term. That's not the case for every term, but for most of them, that would be the case. But one of the benefits of that is that any term that you're taking 2 courses, that second course is going to come out to 25% less. So that will allow you to skim off a little bit of the cost. So the next thing is grad school affordable? And it certainly can be. And there are different ways of funding your education. Most people don't pay the whole lump sum up front. I've never met a student that has done that. Though of course, that's an option. But for most students, they're funding their education either through federal aid or they're doing a payment plan. They're paying as they go. When looking at federal aid, when applying it to a graduate program, it'll be in the form of student loans. And that's an option for those of you that might be looking to take out those loans and fund your education. If you're concerned about reaching your point, Grad Plus loans is another option. And again, if we schedule time for you and I to speak one-on-one, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about that. But again, doing a payment plan is another alternative where you are paying course by course. And in the program, we do have 13 different scholarships. And as a student, you can apply up to 4 of them and receive up to 2. And as you're seeing, they range between the dollar amount and the percentage. And it's a good idea for you to look through the different scholarships that we offer and see what you qualify for. And this will also be part of the application process. At some point, you'll speak with the financial aid department and they'll walk you through the awarding process. So we make sure that this is covered before you've even been admitted, just so that it's not a headache that you'll worry about as you're leading up to starting class. And another option of reducing your tuition is through one of our partnerships, or we also have them as titled MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. Many of you are probably familiar with that term, but this is basically a partnership the university would have with maybe a diocese or with an individual parish or an organization. And these are just some examples that we have, but these aren't all of the partnerships. We have many others. And if, let's say you belong to a diocese or a school or a parish where that partnership has not yet been established, it's one that we can establish. And I'd be more than happy to speak with you again to figure out how we can get your costs reduced. And this brings us to the end. And I do want to highlight very quickly, by the way, and this is also in relation to tuition reductions. We do have a start date coming up on May 17th. That's going to be our summer semester. And that semester only covers one term. So you have one 8-week term, and then you're going to have an 8-week break after that before the fall semester. And this is a great time to apply only because right now we're actually at our peak level of scholarships. Again, it depends on what you qualify for, but I know that this is going to be the height of our scholarships. So if you're looking for a more substantial one, this would be a great time to begin class. And I've also included, by the way, my contact information is in here, so feel free to save it. But I've also included for each of you a code for the application. And typically there's a $55 application fee, but if you put in the code CCMMP 1999, then that'll waive the application fee for you. So we'll make it a free one. So that concludes the details. And what I'd like to do now is open up the floor to each of you for any questions that you have. So whether it's for me or for Dr. Ewing, I'd be happy to answer, have us answer your questions. Okay, and so one question was, can you outline the length of each term? So the length of each term, and this is also a very common misunderstanding. Usually terms and the word term in scholarship can be misunderstood as being one and the same. And I think we usually use those words interchangeably in our regular English language. but they would be two different things. We are semester-based. A semester consists of 16 weeks, and then a term is 8 weeks. And so in any given semester, with the exception of summer, that's sort of an outlier, you'll have term 1 and term 2. So if you're taking one course per term, that means that you're going through that one course within 8 weeks before you jump into your next term. There's usually, I believe, about a week break between each one. Great question. Okay, let's see. There's another question here. I have past degrees and licensure in New York State for a registered nurse and adult primary care gerontology. Do any credits transfer? That's a good question. So there are transferable credits. I think it would be unlikely to see it come from that field of study. Usually we would see more transfer of credit to be found in either counseling or psychology. Though, of course, we could always talk a little bit more about that. There still might be an opportunity for this. We'd have to look at your transcript. So there's no, we wouldn't weigh out the option of transfer of credit. Again, we would just need to review your transcripts and also the syllabi for the courses that could be considered transferable. For any questions that come up, my contact information, my telephone number is 703-705-9118. And you're welcome to call me, you're welcome to text me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, hopefully schedule an appointment between you and I, or you can email me, and my email is admissions.msp@divinemercy.edu. So with that said, I'm going to have us end here. But again, Dr. Ewing, thank you so much for sitting in with us and just sharing the program from the perspective of faculty.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you all for coming in, and I wish you all a great evening.